about to blow up. It's time to testify. Chain and signatures launched. We're reaching for the sky. Blockchain hit the locks. Niggas leading the drive. Now sign ain't changed. The future's is live. Chain signatures we ride. Anytime, anywhere. Near protocol nights. Catch a secret there. Blockchain out in the technologies are fair. Elevate the game. Chains all in the air. About to blow up, it's time to testify. Chain and signatures launched. We're reaching for the sky. Blockchain hit the locks. Niggas leading the drive. Now sign ain't changed. The future's is live.
All right, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here today. This is the Redacted Online Hackathon AMA with Masa. And if you don't know, they are a project that does a whole lot in the AI space, doing a lot of stuff with Near, and we're going to get to know a lot more about them. First off, I'm going to do a little housekeeping real quick before we all do introductions. One, the hackathon, there's still time to sign up. Lots of bounties. I'll pull the bounties up here. I mean, we got over 600,000 in bounties. Masa has some specific bounties that we're going to get into a little bit today. We got a whole lot of bounties happening right now. The deadline for submitting projects is October 25th. So you still have plenty of time and you can stack bounties. Secondly, this is the online hackathon. Then we also have November 9th through 11th, the Redacted event. It's like an event. It's a conference. It's an IRL movement. And that will be in Bangkok, just like very close to the DevCon venue. So if you're going to DevCon, this is a few days before it. So catch them both and reclaim your sovereignty there. All right. Housekeeping done. Let's introduce everybody. First, my co-host, Joe. Jump on in and give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, sure.
Not that you need one.
No, I'm on a lot of these things. I'm Joe. I'm representing Near Dev Hub. We handle the entire developer ecosystem on the Near protocol.
And Cynthia, jump on in. I'm super excited for you guys. Masa's a great team.
Hey everyone, my name is Clancy. I'm co-founder of Masa. First of all, great intro and great opening. The anime actually reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Hopefully we have some fans in the crowd today. Super glad to be here. We have been working very closely with the Near team for quite some time. Very excited to deep dive into what we're doing here at Masa, especially when it comes to developer applications.
And Brendan, let's jump on in.
Yeah, good to see everyone today. Brendan, technical co-founder of Masa. Really excited to be here to dive into what we're building at Masa. Give you some overview and insight into our kind of philosophy, why we're building this, who we're building it for, and yeah, thrilled to be working with Near on pushing the decentralized AI ecosystem forward.
Awesome, man. This is really exciting. So before we jump in, we know that like Near has got three verticals: blockchain, chain abstraction, and then of course the AI, user-owned AI, all that. So that's where you guys definitely land and help out. So first off, if you can just kind of explain what your project is for like the audience who've never seen it, like they just show up.
Yeah, I'll give a very high level overview of what Masa is. So Masa was born out of both an ambition and a goal to democratize, decentralize, and give open and permissionless access to data at scale, breaking the paradigm and the kind of stranglehold that large, monolithic, centralized organizations have on not just our personal data, but data as a whole. Like we all know the paradigm of, Facebook, now Meta, Google really owning billions of people's data to then monetize that using ad revenue. We're now moving into a paradigm where companies like Scale AI, who source, label, and structure huge amounts of data for foundation models, the likes of Anthropic, the likes of OpenAI, even Meta's Llama model, are all trained through a single institution having, let's say, 80% of the share of the market, maybe even more. I think they just hold back from saying 100% because they'd probably be broken up for anti-competitive nature. And we decided that this monopoly had to be broken up and it had to be put in the hands of individuals where any individual globally can both contribute data to the network and any individual or developer globally can access this data. That means unlocking data from wherever it lives through a decentralized network of nodes that brings together web data, Twitter data, conversational data that's been extracted from speech to text, structures that and makes it available in a very easy to consume, easy to use format for any AI or machine learning developer. I do want to emphasize also machine learning because we often just bundle AI and machine learning together and they're two unique disciplines. AI is where the attention is now. So very much for agents using like RAG, fine tuning or pre-training. But then let's not forget this stuff is also hugely, hugely valuable for machine learning models. So that's kind of a bit of background on us, giving high quality data to developers anywhere in the world.
Okay, that's great. So if we think about the AI stack, because I for some people on here, they might be where I'll bring it way down to just like kind of like just learning about AI. You've got a stack, right? And it's kind of basically like data, compute and models, benchmarking, and like agents, right? That could be a tech stack. That's kind of the near tech stack. And there's some more variations, kind of it. And you guys sit at the data area and you help part of the tech stack. And data. Oh yeah. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was going to say, I really, really love how you break down the AI infrastructure into a few pieces, because sometimes when we see a headline, like Meta spending hundreds of millions of dollars building Llama 3.2 model, we only see AI associating with model. But the AI stack is much more complex and dynamic than that. As you put very well, Jared, we have 4 layers of the AI tech stack. First, we have compute. Then we have inference or model, then we have data, and then at the top of it, we have applications. That's the ChatGPT, the apps and the AI agents that consumers love and interact with on a daily basis. At Masa, we hold the view that data is the oil for the entire AI stack. Data is the most important currency and the part that deserves the most amount of decentralization. Getting real-time, high-quality data to developer is really key in not only building more affordable AI agents, but also unlocking a whole world of possibilities when it comes to building new AI applications and building new AI agents. At Masa, we've really collated this massive network of 48,000 node workers who are scraping and structuring data in real time and supplying such data to AI developers for them to build cool AI agents, AI applications that we can dive into today.
That's awesome. And then Joe, I definitely want you to jump in here. But so when I think about like AI, the most important things are going to be like energy. As you can tell, like the world's like, how do we run the energy of all these like, warehouses of H100s? And then 2, it's going to be data. And so you have 48,000, which is it's a massive number, all scraping data from all over the web that can then be funneled into specific ways into AI agents and then also machine learning, but we might get into that as well, right? So that's sort of the explain like I'm 5 high level of like data, scrape data, take data, give data.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we think about in the future, agents becoming these like reasoning, almost thinking machines, these machines need eyes and ears to be able to interact with the world. Those eyes and ears are data feeds or pipelines. Like we have data feed, which is optical, and we have auditory as well. At the moment, the predominant format for getting data into an agent is text-based, although that's changing, specifically changing with OpenAI releasing their speech engine, which was like over the last couple of days. So even in that instance, the speech is converted into text and ultimately finds its way into the transformer model to be consumed. So we are building eyes and ears for AI agents, and also creating a collection vessel, almost like an archive or a library of all of that data, where it can be accessed by researchers, by scientists, by machine learning, by AI engineers to, in the future or today, tune those models. And we have two steps that we really go through. We have a training of the model, which creates, in this instance, a generalized foundation model that's very good at solving a general set of problems. We release that. This is what Anthropic, Meta, and this is what OpenAI are doing. That's then released, and within that, if it's an open source, open weight model, they can be fine-tuned, or you can add additional data into the model at the prompt level, which is RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And that's really where you're, in a sense, creating an extended memory. Like, let's say we all wanted to have a discussion around hockey. I'm British, I know nothing about hockey, ice hockey. But I could quickly flick through a book, put that into memory, and then have a conversation. That is what RAG does. It takes those pages from that like hockey manual and makes it immediately available and retrievable for the agent. So it's not just eyes and ears, it's also like, how do you then transfer the data feeds, which the eyes and ears of a specific like topic, like maybe that's a lecture we're listening to, or in this case, a book that we're feeding into the actual model, or, you know, the most recent conversations around a topic on Twitter, or the weather from weather.com, or the price from coinmarketcap.com of certain assets. We feed that in through our pipelines, and then we embed that in a memory or create a library or a dictionary that can be used for retrieval by the model, or in the future for scientists to then train the model. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it.
Man, dude, this stuff is so cool. Like, because I think AI agents are just starting to get into like the conversation, you know. For us, for people into AI, we're like, yeah, agents are the thing. But I think people are just starting to get into it. Joe, if you want to jump on in here, we've got some.
Yeah, I'd love to help the audience better understand too a little bit of like, why is, you kind of touched on a little bit, like, why is the decentralized piece of this though so important? Like, what the argument might be, just like, I could still scrape data normally if I really wanted to. These other companies are doing it. Why this model, and what does the future really bring with this?
Yeah, I think there's two dimensions. I think there's the ability to scale, where with centralized institutions, like there's companies like Bright Data, Apify, Scale, who does a lot of the data delivery for AI companies, is known for labeling and annotation, but in fact, they do have a procurement department that goes out and gets a lot of this data as well. It's just not as well known. They either buy or they source themselves. And when we're thinking about acquiring data at scale in a timely fashion, you're either crawling individually, you know, maybe 50, 100,000 web pages, which takes a long time, or you're spreading that load across a distributed set of nodes who are doing the work in parallel. Now, typically the engineering talent or the expertise to run parallel kind of compute or scraping jobs is quite technical. So it's either going to cost you a lot of money, or the developer resources can be hard to acquire. What we're doing is we are on a foundational level building our infrastructure on a base of that distributed workload. So this is like typically what you've seen in data jobs in the past, like Spark, Hadoop have like spread workloads across many nodes to speed up a process, and then allow the data to be coalesced, maybe using MapReduce or another methodology to bring the data back together, and you're ending up with a unified data set. So we're applying this model at scale, and we're using either unused compute. This may be on someone's laptop, so you can run a node on your laptop. This means you're not running it in the cloud with AWS or GCP. It means you're able to monetize and like leverage unused resources in your background. So it's an opportunity for a revenue stream for a user, which is adding a lot of value to different markets. But then more broadly, it's actually a feature, not a bug, that this is decentralized. The feature is you're able to spread a significant number of requests for a large data set over a distributed network of actors that are being coordinated and orchestrated using an economic model to maintain honesty and resilience in your network that ultimately leads to a faster, more secure response and ability to acquire data at scale. So it's a feature, not a bug. And really, this kind of data acquisition is much more suited to the permissionless nature or the decentralized nature of blockchain like we have today.
Yeah, and I'll probably offer 2 cents from a non-technical perspective, because I know our audience is a mix of technical and non-technical folks here at Near Protocol and at Masa. We often are asked, why crypto or why decentralization for AI, right? Isn't centralized AI great enough? They have a huge amount of resources and a lot of brilliant minds focusing on building centralized AI. My answer is normally twofold, especially in the context of what we're building here at Masa. One is Web3 incentives. As Jared mentioned up top, being able to build a network of 48,000 node workers in such a short amount of time is really impressive. How do we manage to do that? Web3 incentive plays a very key role in expanding and growing a network of contributors very quickly in a fairly easy way. The second thing is really coordination. As Brendan put in a more technical term, we have designed this tokenomics and incentive system to make sure that everyone is providing the highest utility of data and work to our decentralized network of data. So if you take away 2 keywords, incentives, coordination, when it comes to why AI needs crypto and decentralized technologies.
Yeah, that's I think that's a really great point, and a lot of the discussion I hear outside of the crypto side of this is that the financial aspects right now of AI seem disproportionate, and you can see if you really think out long term, you can really see how it's going to just widen that gap even further. And it sounds like one of the things that you might be solving is the where of like, if I have proprietary data using you as a network, does that allow me to also be incentivized as that data provider?
It's actually even easier than that. So what we require from node workers is simply your bandwidth. In most of the developed markets, we would have unlimited data plan. Instead of just wasting your unlimited data plan, you can very simply set up a node on your devices and then run a Masa node. What you do passively on the Masa network is that you scrape and structure data per developer request. So it's almost like a set and forget kind of model. You don't need to actively complete data work. Versus in the more centralized version, let's call it the scale AI model, they employ a huge amount of human beings across the globe to manually annotate data and label data. And Masa, on our decentralized network, you just set up the environment, you forget about it, and then you passively do work in the background and earn rewards on the back of it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just jump in real quick. That's awesome. So basically, I'm sure there's maybe a tutorial for that, and we can put that in the link in the show notes for sure. Because that, I think, is something that, like, so for people hacking in this hackathon, we have over 1,000 people already. There's like, I think 1,050 people signed up for this hackathon and growing. They can hack, but for people listening who aren't hacking, this is something else that someone can do as well. Is it something that like someone like a normie could do, or maybe not a normie, someone who has a computer who's able to do this, or does it take a bit of technical know-how?
We're getting there. We're getting to the point where I would say in the next few months, we will have an executable for both Mac and Windows that you'll be able to run through like a GUI or a UI flow on your computer. Simple as like installing an application like you normally do. So that's coming very soon, and that will massively lower the barrier to entry and allow that number to significantly increase beyond the 50,000 or the 48,000 where we are today.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the I don't even get necessarily technical, but like the concept of having the validator nodes set up. So is this something though where it does hit a point where you have too many, like it doesn't like fully scale all the way, like so if you become almost oversaturated, or is it something simply where even if you hit a huge number, everyone still is able to still earn rewards, and you are continuing to distribute that all the way through?
We have a very interesting way of distributing curves. To like add some mathematical terms here, we use a machine learning model right now to define a kurtosis curve that we then apply a cumulative distribution function to. So what this ends up doing is it ends up normalizing outliers. So these could be nodes that are, for example, scraping a disproportionately high amount of data, for example. Maybe there is a partition in the network and a particular subset of nodes gets a very high number of requests. This normalizes those outliers into this curve and then actually heavily incentivizes the top, let's say 10 or 20%. So you end up with an S curve that represents the reward curve. And it actually incentivizes competition to get to the top of the curve. So what this means is that workers on the network are constantly thinking about optimizing their infrastructure and the way their node responds to get to the top of that curve. That's typically driven by the quality of data, which is defining that as an interesting problem, along with the amount of data. We look at quality as in what is in most high demand. And obviously that's changing. It's a stochastic system. So what we're seeing in demand today may change next week. And it's very important to be able to adjust dynamically the reward curve based on what is most in demand and what is most valuable to the consumers on the network, to those people that are consuming this set of resources. And to answer your question about, is there a scaling limit? Not necessarily. I would say that definitely geographically, it benefits local clusters where you're joining the network. You get lower latency, higher performance with nodes that are in, as we would call it, your locality. Like maybe they're in your hash table and some are not. So they'll get maybe preferential treatment if you're using the network. But we typically see like work distribution as evenly as possible across nodes, but allowing for enough redundancy where we're scaling horizontally with nodes that join the network. So it's designed to scale horizontally. It's slightly sublinear, not fully linear scaling, but we are always looking for more nodes to provide more bandwidth as demand is going up exponentially.
You kind of actually almost answered my next question here about so as the consumer of it, so as the developer of it, that I was going to ask, how are you dealing with different locations as a global network? But it sounds like again you are trying to both localize it as best as possible if it's available, so that I can lower my latency from there. That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and then we have a bit of mathematics or a utility function that adjusts the fee that a developer will pay based on the amount of resources on the network. So it's a little bit like how gas adjusts its price. The higher the demand, the smaller the pool of resources, the more you've got to pay to sort of get priority on the network. And that's a dynamic calculation.
Cool. This is awesome. Like the whole like nuts and bolts of it. Let's I'm gonna pivot just a little bit, right? I like the mix of like let's get deep technical for people, and now I'm gonna take it to like, okay, let's talk use cases. You're building in this hackathon. You've got some bounties. There's some Masa bounties, dealing with agents. So I think let's talk about some use cases of Masa and how that works in this like area of near.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very fortunate to be part of the REDACTED Hackathon. We're actually bringing the entire Masa team to Bangkok to participate and hopefully meet as many developers as possible on the ground at REDACTED. For this hackathon specifically, we have a bounty that would invite developers to build different kind of AI agents using Masa Twitter data. As we all know, Twitter data has many, many use cases. I'll probably share two today. First of all, I'm sure a lot of you love KOLs or key opinion leaders or influencers on crypto Twitter. You can build a KOL AI agent using Masa free Twitter data. So in the future, maybe you're asking Ilya from Near or the AI agent version of Ilya through your LLM chat interface, and then you'll be able to ask Ilya questions such as, what are the latest developments from Near? What are the roadmap of Near in the next couple months, et cetera, et cetera. So that's number one, KOL AI agent. The second example I want to share is another topic that we all love nowadays, which is meme coin. You'll be able to build a meme coin AI agent rather easily with free Masa Twitter data. And then you'll be able to ask questions such as, hey, what are the hottest meme coins? What are some price predictions you might have for me, my AI agent, et cetera, et cetera. Those are only two examples, but they're such a wild world of possibilities for anyone to be building AI agents using Masa data.
Yeah, let me follow up on this because this AI agent leveraging thing of the data. So let's say like in crypto, right? People are really into DeFi. So you could create an agent and you could, they'll go to Masa, and then tomorrow's workshop, you guys can actually show how like you leverage the data. And like, maybe there's some parameters and you can say, okay, when you're looking at Twitter data, if you start seeing a certain, like maybe I could ask the agent to have like a list of 20 tokens, they could kind of keep an eye on it. And then if like sentiment starts rising or lowering within it, that agent could start doing things, right? Is it like that? Does it work like that as well? Or do I always have to ask the agent and it retrieves the data? Or can I like set alerts?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there are two approaches. If you're the lowest hanging fruit here, I believe, is using a base model. And like Clancy was saying, with that base model, adding accurate context that is based on the prompt it receives. So using RAG, like retrieval augmented generation, if I was to ask an agent, what is the history of Bitcoin? It would create an embedding with that particular input prompt. That embedding uses natural language processing, and it creates a vector, which is essentially an association between words. So the association here is history and Bitcoin. It will then use that association to look up data that we've already put in a pre-populated database in a vector store, and it will retrieve any data where there's a relationship to Bitcoin or history from our data set, structure that, and then put it into the agent. So it's like looking on a index of a book, finding the pages that have particular topics on. Like, let's say we're looking here for history, and we've actually got 3 references in the index. We can then go and grab those pages, consume those pages, and then use that to respond intelligently as a human being. That's how we look something up, retrieve it, memorize it, and then put it into action. We have that same process going on here with agents where, let's say we, through the Masa protocol, scrape all of the keywords for the top 3 cryptos every single day. We actually have data sets available for people on, it'll be on the Near Hub, also on Hugging Face. You can just get access to these data sets immediately. They're constantly updated, and you can use them out of the box. You don't need to set up your own protocol node. You can just use this data to get up and running really quickly. You can then think about the best way of creating your like RAG chain. And what a RAG chain is the chain of logic through which an agent acquires information to put into its memory. Like maybe it's going to go out and fetch that in real time. Like maybe part of that chain is, if I put a keyword in that says, what is the price of Bitcoin now? The fact that I've got now in there triggers part of the RAG chain to go out and fetch the price of Bitcoin in real time, retrieve that, and then put that into the model. So as the agent can then consume that data immediately, as opposed to what was the historical price or what is the sentiment over the last 3 days of Bitcoin, which requires a very different data set. So the most important consideration here is thinking, what is your base data set for the product you're building? Is that product going to be an agent that speaks and talks like Jared? Well, if so, we would go out and get all of the historical podcasts that Jared has been on, convert those speech to text, and then we'd isolate Jared as a speaker and use that as context to maybe pre-train our agent or feed in to give the agent the ability to speak like Jared.
Okay. Sorry, this is kicking off ideas. And then Joe, jump in here because I could just what I like about the AI in the crypto space, right? Like is my thought is, okay, so now we're going to create a Jared AI, right? Like I want to make something that's similar to me. So I can scrape all my Twitter, I can upload podcasts, maybe writings, anything that you've ever seen, right? And say I've got enough that I can put that into an agent. Yeah. Is there a way, because of the sort of decentralization and blockchain aspect, that can somewhat be gated a little bit? So I have like I have access to it, but someone can't just instantly take me and clone me, or have an agent clone 1,000 of me and then send an army of me on. Like, this is what I'm trying to figure out with, like, where does it stop? And is that on your guys' end, or is that not a big deal? Is it just like, we're not there yet?
That's a very interesting theoretical scenario. I think there's a lot of builders out there that would like that avatar or that digital twin of yourself to be owned by you, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have rights to that synthetic version of you. There is nothing today stopping anyone from creating a synthetic Jared, though, and masquerading with synthetic Jared, which is an interesting problem, right? Like, how do they then deal with that? So with the proliferation of this technology, with these new features, you're going to find that, on this hackathon, somebody may make a synthetic Jared.
And no one probably wants to make a synthetic me, but there's a lot of people out there. Like, I'm just thinking, like, I'm making an AI agent content team, right? And this is my one use case, and then Joe, jump in with more dev like stuff. But okay, in each one of these agents, I'm going to do like a, AI agent orchestration. One of the agents, I want to use Masa and use some sort of data feed in there.
Yeah.
And I was almost thinking, like, you could make a list of 50 key opinion leaders or whatever, people I like, scrape their stuff, get the sentiment and what they're talking about, and then have an AI agent write sort of responses of other things according to that, is what I'm thinking.
It's an amazing way of summarizing a lot of data in a very concise way.
And that's in effect what our customers are doing and what our developers are doing with our data already. So recently we published a case study of a trading platform called Ola Wealth, funded by a former Binance data scientist. What they have done is that they're currently monitoring 1,000 crypto key opinion leaders or KOLs' tweets. And then they have real-time tweets from Masa streaming across their entire AI ecosystem. And then they will be able to directly interact with the KOL agents. So in the future, it will be the mini Jared, the mini Clanthea, Brendan, and Joe chatting with our community instead of the 4 of us on the live stream now today.
Totally. Like, and people who are into trading, I think this is where crypto people, I believe that, like, crypto is going to, crypto and AI, I think they work really well together. Individually, each really cool. Combined, it's like going to change the way the world functions. And so in this sense, like, I just see it being like my AI agent is going to be trading in the future. And it's like, if people are going to want to trade meme coins, they can make their AI agents with enough data endpoints to, like, really compete and probably do better than human trading. Possibly.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating because it's a way of projecting your opinion and your thoughts into another vessel. That's really powerful. And just going back to this sort of memory retrieval, when you're having a conversation with this synthetic entity, so long as it has the right context loaded into it, you can have a conversation about that topic, and it's really powerful. So you start off with this shell that you can then build more of like a let's call it personality, knowledge base, environmental awareness. You can sort of start injecting all of these different things into it that makes it feel and seem very aware and very like you as an individual.
Yeah, I think for people in AI, like AI agents is the thing that we think is going to be the future of AI and user interaction in general. But for people outside of AI, they may not be aware of AI agent. The better way to understand this is really your AI assistant or your AI friend, or just a copy of your digital twin that can help answer questions, can read your mind, can speak like you, and can behave like you.
All right, Joe, how does this all work with your projects?
Yeah, I want to actually, though, go back first for a second. You talk about, like, the real-time data piece of that. So how is that getting managed in that RAG chain there? Are you, as a developer, is that incumbent on me to make sure that I am retrieving that data in real time and then feeding it back in? Or do you guys have mechanisms within Masa to actually go and handle real-time requests?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're on the transition point. We're actually doing some work with a really big enterprise at the moment to refine the way that logic gets executed. I think you've got your very good set of tools that you can use today. LangChain is like your starting point. If you want to have low friction, get up and running really quickly, we've even just recompiled a multi-file agent into a single file agent using LangChain plus Near AI Hub, and it will be deployed in Near AI Hub. There's one minor thing we're fixing with one of your engineering team, and then it'll be available in there. So hopefully during the hackathon, you can get access to this example bit of code, pair it up with data in the Near Hub, and then you can kind of get up and running really quickly. That's a good way of chaining together your RAG logic. However, we are seeing that there are opportunities to use an LLM in this RAG chain. So for example, LLMs have a characteristic where you can actually create functions within the LLM where you can very explicitly define a way in which an LLM will respond. So maybe that is conditional logic that says, if based on certain criteria, you see this kind of input or response from the user, structure this query. And that query might be to go out and call a specific curl request on an endpoint to get a specific set of data. So weather might be one of these like functions that you're listening out for, or parameters you're listening out for on the LLM. And if it hears weather, it will have the knowledge and understanding to construct a curl request to go out and call, let's say, a weather API or scrape weather.com through the protocol, retrieve that, and then structure that response in a way where it can then use it in its chain of logic. But it has this almost like agentic flow where you can use a chain of agents to achieve an objective that is outside of the scope of just a single retrieval, for example. We're going to provide the tooling to do that. Where we see that logic deployed, I think is still a big opportunity in the Web3 space. I think there's lots of teams that are kind of thinking about doing that. How that finally manifests itself, I think it will end up going from quite diffuse projects doing it to there being a winner. And if that winner is us, that's great. We're certainly working on the problem.
Yeah, I was going to say, as part of the larger strategy here, is it to become that one-stop shop, or is it to become more of a orchestrating layer for this, or both?
I think less orchestration for us, because if we look at the way the Web2 stack has evolved, you very clearly see a bifurcation between data aggregation, data processing, and then the tooling for agent orchestration as two very separate businesses. And I think they require very separate thinking and talent. In the event you become a multi-billion-dollar valuable protocol, I think you can do anything. But in the first sense, you focus on one of those two areas. I think the reality today is that there's some extremely good Web2 tools for orchestration that I don't know if they need decentralizing right now. I think the most valuable part of the decentralized stack is the way that agents are deployed and owned. To Jared's point, like, how do I have sovereignty over this agent and own the IP of this agent and the reflection of me? But then also, how is the data aggregated and not controlled in a centralized way? Like when we think about, some of the examples you've given here today about these companies going out, even using like Mechanical Turk or individuals in countries to annotate data, it's still a centralized identity deciding how those people get rewarded and compensated. There is no like, to what we're seeing right now in the ports in the US, there is no union of like annotation workers that can defend for themselves. In a decentralized system, you do have power as a token holder, as a participant in the network, to influence the way in which you get compensated, the way you participate. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And those are the areas that will get decentralized first, as opposed to the tooling, which LangChain is by far and away, I think, the best platform for doing this right now.
Yeah, I totally agree what you're talking about with the decentralization aspect, because here's where I'm like hoping that this is what I'm trying to do right now. And I'm like Masa, and I'm looking at a couple other things. So say I run content. I want to make a team of 6 AI agents, each with a specific focus of how I think of content, maybe 6, maybe 10, who knows? But each one of those I'm going to tool and specifically for what I think works the best, right? And so there's some sort of like, I don't know, my aspect that I want to own of that, right? Because then if I can make that team of AI agents, then I could leverage that, and other projects could just like ping my agents and then pay them a little bit of money and then go on and like basically use it in the same way. That's kind of the hope. But I don't know. I don't know if that's like we're there yet, but I'm going to try it a lot with you guys. Like,
I think it's coming very soon. I really do. I think the way that they actually deploy that, so I think there's two orchestration layers. There's the logic in which a single agent builds up its decisioning and reasoning. If you use O1 in GPT, you'll actually see that chain of thought happening, and that is increasingly moving to the LLM. So I actually think that there is quite a big risk on platforms like LangChain that you're using like a RAG chain to do logic or reasoning, because the existential threat is that's all going to end up in the LLM. And I think that's a very realistic possibility that's going to happen. So again, you've really got to think critically about what you're building today. Like, what is the most valuable piece of the stack? What has the most enduring value? We know for a fact that data is being generated every second of every day. Like, there'll be people out there that say, like, we've used all the data in the world to train our models. That is factually incorrect, because in the time that we've been on it, we've just created new content today.
Yeah.
There is not a single agent that's created on this, that's trained on this podcast yet. Every day, human beings are generating more knowledge, more information. That has to be fed into something. There is always going to be the need for data pipelines. There is always going to be the need to get this information into these models.
And I cannot emphasize enough the importance and the value of real-time data. So I would encourage everyone to do this small experiment right now. Go to your ChatGPT or Claude or your tool of choice, and then ask the tool a question about what happened yesterday. I would bet you 1,000 Masa right now that they cannot answer the question. And then they will let you know that the data that's fed into our model is as of, let's say, April this year or December last year. Having real-time data is extremely important in the ever-changing world that we live in right now.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd like to talk about two things that I think we didn't quite touch on too much now. So there's the incentives for like the nodes and stuff. But as a developer, where am I paying a cost, or how is that today and how's that going to be in the future?
Yeah. Right now, you're living in the rarefied era of early adoption in a cycle of everything is either free or nearly free. That doesn't just apply to us, but it applies to like the entire ecosystem. I think we've got maybe 3 or 4 more years of that being the case in this cycle. So right now with Masa, it's free. You could think of it in the future a little bit like BitTorrent, where you can not necessarily free leech, you'll have to pay a fee, but you can also contribute back to the network. So a developer can also run infrastructure to feed their own pipelines or indeed contribute to the network. So there's both of those kind of positions. But right now, it's completely free. In the future, you'll pay a minimal gas fee in Masa in the same way that you would for a gas transaction on Ethereum.
Awesome. And one of the things that we didn't really touch on yet is, and I don't know if this is the role that you guys are trying to play necessarily, but a big piece of all of this data obviously is verification of sources. And like, is this legit data? Is that something that you guys are taking on as part of the task of your network, or is that a different layer somewhere in there?
Yeah, it's such a good question. To answer your question, we are taking this on. There is a industry-wide problem with decentralizing things that are not purely validating a ledger or verifying a virtual machine's state, like an EVM operation. The way that we're approaching this, and this is actually going to be, it's not public. This is probably the first time I'm saying it publicly. We're creating a secure execution environment in which we ensure through an attestation that the code that a miner or a worker is running on the network is code that has been compiled to a certain standard. So what do I mean by that? I mean that you can guarantee the execution of a request by a remote party, and that the request that remote party is making is getting data directly from a source. That source might be a web page that it's pulling in. That source might be data from a specific API that is authenticated by the node against it. This is how we do it with Twitter. We authenticate against Twitter's API, user brings their credentials, and then that node is able to deliver data. But what is preventing that node from injecting a dictionary of a million tweets that they've synthetically created with an LLM and getting rewards to them? The fact of the matter is we have this secure execution environment that's going to use a specific like Intel SGX chip you'll need to use to run this. And it will ensure that the code that you're running is to a spec, let's say. And the binary that you're running is a authorized network compatible version of code that enforces the collection, the structuring, and the acquiring of data. So that's something we are going to roll out ecosystem wide and make available as part of the protocol, so as other teams can also use this very like base primitive to verify that, you know, maybe compute is being done to standard. Like, let's say I'm bringing a GPU. How can I prove that GPU is in fact X gigabytes of memory, Y megahertz of power? You could use this enclave to do that in a remote attestation way.
Interesting. So is it fair to say that this is essentially like, is that you're not signing off on like the data itself is true? What you're saying is that what I expected to get from like the source I'm supposed to expecting data from is actually that source. It has not been modified. Interesting.
Exactly.
Right.
And using cryptographic signatures in the process. So for example, if I'm acquiring data from a remote API, what's stopping me from routing that request through a proxy and spoofing or creating an API that is a mock of the one I'm interacting with? Well, we verify within the container the actual certificate of the remote server as like a trusted source. And if your certificate within your runtime isn't matching your source server, then that isn't valid data, for example.
Yeah, that's clever. Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
Joe dropped it. It's clever. I like that. I like when two technical people get going and they're like, yeah, good. Yeah, got that question. Got it down. You guys are really solving the problems.
Yeah. It's not just me. We have like a really amazing team of people working on this internally. And it's fun. Like this kind of stuff is fun stuff to work on.
Oh, totally. Like I'm wondering too, like, okay, so you have blockchain, right? The one thing about blockchain that I like think is the coolest thing is the digital ownership aspect, like a true proof of anything, really. So is there a way, I guess this is a question for Joe as well, like if someone's hacking in this hackathon, to some way leverage that blockchain? And this is going to be completely technically inaccurate, but this is what I'm trying to think. Like there's an NFT. Within that NFT is all of your data. Therefore, you kind of own it and people can't get to it. And then you can leverage that into your agent. Or Joe, does that make zero sense? Which I'm assuming it does. But, you know, visually, I'm trying to get there.
You're saying like it's like a gatekeeper? Like
the
NFT serving as the gatekeeper?
Yeah, not like a ZK, but, you know, something like that where you're like, and I can constantly keep updating that. I could upload writings that I'm into. If I have a blog, if I do a podcast, I have 5 streams of data I want to input it in. Sort of like a big container of data that I own. Can someone hack that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like absolutely. I mean, why not? You know, so the beauty of I love like again like what Masa is doing, a lot of these other projects are doing is that they're opening it up for you to be able to build on top of. So, however, I then choose to leverage that. If I want to build an interface that requires you to first hold an NFT to see my interface, then I can gate it that way, and then the requests, so on and so forth. So, I mean, and from a hackathon standpoint, you want to actually like start chaining together bounties. I mean, here's how you start to do that, where, you know, see how you can start to leverage multiple things. But it sounds like from what Masa is doing and then from other things, like you're really not limited in what you build on top of it. If you need data, like it's open there for you to use.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you want to bring a connector to personal data, like maybe that's Plaid to get your banking information, maybe that's another source. There's nothing stopping you from building a module and adding that package into the network and offering it to a developer.
See, this is go ahead.
Fundamentally, what we're trying to transform is really the aggregation and structuring layer of data, right? How you get the data and then how you use the data is up to the developers. But how it matters in the Masa decentralized format is how to create a more permissionless and open way of getting data in the structure that is most suitable for AI developers.
See, this is cool because Joe, I'm looking around. If you go to Near catalog, right? And I'll put the link in the show notes. It's dev.near.org/applications, and it's got a bunch of like all the projects building on Near, right? Just a catalog of all the projects. And I'm just looking through them, and I'm like, okay, sweat. They could do something with an AI agent where they like are scraping all the like they could get 20 different athletic KOLs, and every time something goes there that's like a running thing, boom, they could like pull that in, leverage that on their app or something, and people could ask the AI agent on their app, what's the most trending thing of like athletic, whatever, I don't know, whatever question you want to ask a bunch of athletes. But then that's just one way to do all this. And then all the DeFi projects, you could do that. I mean, you could have meme.cooking or any of these like things. They could just scrape the web, and when some fun, interesting thing happens that's like an outlier on Twitter, instantly create a token on it or like a meme coin on it, right? Like, so you can start to see how you can gamify this as well. I'm hoping I'm going down like the right thread. I don't want to like throw people on like
No, I love
way.
it. I love it. If you really, really want to experiment with Masa data during Redacted Hackathon, I know there are a lot of new meme coins around politics, given we're in election season. You can set triggers based on Twitter data. If, let's say, a new politician's name is mentioned X amount of times, you create a meme token based on the politician. I think that's a clever idea. Well, clever idea using Joe's word here. But the point is, you have unbounded imagination and possibilities when it comes to using Masa data.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, Joe, so Joe, this is any ideas, like any use cases that you're kind of thinking from like a developer point of view that you could kind of share? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, definitely on the spot. Well, I wanted to, so tomorrow we are doing a deep dive from a technical standpoint on DevHub Live. So Brendan will be back for that. And I want to kind of lead into that and kind of introduce that in the sense of like, if I'm a developer coming in from a Web 2 model, okay, so I'm new to this, is Masa stepping in to a place where like Google's BigQuery is it something like that? Like what is the comparison that I would try to tell someone of like what is this centralized data and how I'm actually accessing data? Is it similar to something like that? Is that how you would explain it to someone?
It's a very good question. The way that we typically kind of say it to the rest of the world outside of Web3 is scale AI plus bright data. Now, even with both of those terms, you've got to be an AI to know what I'm talking about. If you're anywhere outside of it, that doesn't really help you. If you think about the data pipelines you're running in a daily like business, that's the set of the infrastructure you operate. Maybe Calanthe can add something that's a little bit more general and broad outside of the AI space.
Yeah, as a non-developer, normally if you need Twitter data, where do you go to? You go to Twitter Developer API, and then you pay anywhere from $5,000 to $40,000 on a monthly basis to scrape 1 million tweets and above. With Masa, you get it for free. So put it in a very, very simple way. Instead of using very complex and very expensive Twitter Developer API, you use Masa Network directly.
Yeah, Databricks is another good example, which is sort of more general.
Yeah,
when you're thinking about like composing your sort of components of your data pipeline stack, Databricks is a really good idea of like that modular Lego brick type analogy of building up the components you need to get your data into your backend.
Now, if I want to put my own data in though, so I'm running a business, I want to put my data into the network. Is that now instantly accessible to everyone, or do I have some controls around who can and can't access that?
In the NFT. Yeah. It's in the NFT.
Interestingly, like we started very early on doing this notion of a like locker for data. Reality is that most enterprises don't want to share their data. They want to keep it internal. Therefore, they have internal tooling in the cloud to do that. And or individuals that want to share their data struggle to monetize it because you're competing against Google and Facebook, basically. Like you have to, as a platform, get hundreds of millions of users to make the data valuable enough with critical mass. So for us, we typically have like trimmed out that functionality from the platform because we've seen that product market fit is not there. And the fit for us is more on the generalized data from the public or private web that's behind walled gardens. Twitter being a really good example of that walled garden, where it's extremely hard to work with the data unless you use a partner like us. And we've got a massive edge by being able to serve that data to people at scale.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, so I think going back to like Jared's question of like if I was going to build something, right? I think the simple path to getting out the door and getting used to building with Masa would be of like, how can I augment what I have, right? So if I'm building a product that maybe I do use some personal data that we do not want shared, it's like, how can I augment this? Maybe like on user profiles, right? I want to bring in someone's Twitter feed, you know, based off their user profile, and we can pull that into the app versus just trying to wholesale start from scratch, right? It's like, okay, let me kickstart some of this stuff as well.
Yeah, your base substrate is your generalized LLM, and then each sort of like plug that you're putting into it is a new kind of memory feed or data feed. And the data feeds you can get from Masa are contextual in like social dimension being Twitter, general web being web scraper, so you can go out and get any information that's on the web. We also support Discord, so if you're running your own Discord server and you want to, for example, do analytics on the conversational information, for example, we actually use it for digesting product feedback. So we have a bot in Discord. That bot is constantly feeding the conversational messages back to us, and we then can analyze that using an LLM or an agent to tell us what are the most requested features, what are the biggest bugs we're seeing. Now, think about how that scales as a product to any company operating in the space that wants to quickly and easily understand what their audience is doing. Bang, you've got a great product for this hackathon to build, a way of understanding and interpreting what communities are doing. What are they talking about? And this can be from the perspective of like degens understanding what, you know, communities talk about, or projects and companies wanting to understand deeply their users. I even had a conversation with a VC last week who was like, so I can use this to track all of the feeds of my portfolio companies to understand at a glance what they're doing and what they've released or what they've been talking about by just saying, you know, what are my portfolio companies, what have they done in the last week? And immediately capturing that information, making it easy to consume, digestible, and easy to understand in a conversational format. Those are all the kind of use cases that you can use it for.
Yeah, I think the gist of it is really that if you want to understand social sentiment across Twitter, Discord, Telegram, you get the data from Masa. And any applications, whether it's trading crypto or understanding your community levels of activity that would rely on social sentiment, you'll be able to use Masa for.
So I kind of think, I think pretty much every project on Near should build an AI agent with their data, scraping the internet, whichever social sentiment their marketing team or their vibe is. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and then I can almost say like anyone could do that. So would an idea, Joe, that someone could actually make like a very simple sort of front end that like allows them to sort of walk through like, okay, you're going to make an AI bot, an AI agent for your project. Here's the 5 boxes you got to input stuff into. Then it probably spits out some code that you then hook to your web. I don't know. Like sometimes I try to not get too technical, and sometimes in my complete lack of technicalness, Joe and I do some pretty fun stuff. But so what do you think, Joe? Is that something possible?
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to like kickstart something else that's like within your system, right? Like I think every developer, anytime we build a product, it is hard to, that's that cold start issue. And sometimes it's about having users, but also it's about having data. And to be able to instantly have data sets that are available to me that have been verified is huge, because now, again, it drives my costs down, but it simplifies that thought process of like what my app can maybe do, and then I just tie it, start tying everything back together.
Yeah, it allows you to focus on the product, not the wrenching of the data pipelines, which as many people know is like it's a lot of overhead. It really is. I mean, you can imagine taking a inventory of every developer in this cohort and tracking their socials and their conversational information, and understanding what is the traction and the development that's going on in this cohort of hackathon developers. There's so many different dimensions. I think the key takeaway for me is it's the ease at which you can break down and digest and consume very complex, broad amounts of information in a very concise way.
Yeah. Tomorrow, you guys on the hackathon deep dive on the workshop, will you actually show how to make an agent? Or is this going to be like something that people can tune in, like myself? Like, I'm just going to watch, like, because I'm really interested in, like, I mean, we could get I love the theory with AI. I love just like when you just like imagine like 1 year, 2 year, 5 years out with any of these AI sort of like projects, where it could go. And I'm just seeing like multiple AI agents for each project focusing on different things. You could have all your developer technical stuff put into one agent, and anytime someone has a technical question, that agent can handle that. You could have your marketing agent that's completely understanding crypto Twitter and then helping your project through its guidelines, craft tweets that you can send. You know, it takes some refining, but for the most part, it could do like 80% of the work, is what I'm saying.
It can do so much of the work. It's
maybe 95% at this point.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I think we lose track as human beings of how much cognitive load there is in synthesizing a complex topic and reducing its complexity into something simple. Abstracting away the need to do that and having trustworthy data. Like Joe keeps hitting on this really important point, like verified, trustworthy data. If you can solve that problem and you then have a pipeline of information, it just makes the decomposition of large sets of information so much easier.
Not to mention that AI agents actually have perfect memory, unlike us human beings who are flawed.
Unlike me.
Right.
It might just be the time in life I'm at, but I've never been more humbled than I have been in the last year from AI. Like any sort of, every once in a while it just does something and I'm like, whoa, that is very impressive. It's like magic. It's alchemy, according to some people, you know, like it's pretty cool.
Sure.
Joe, what else do we want to kind of get at? Like, I know we're going to get into the technical stuff tomorrow, but just like any couple things, and you know, any last sort of things as we kind of.
No, I hope that people walk away from this and have questions, and you know, hopefully, you know, tomorrow they can bring some more questions too. But I really, this is one of the products, and I'm not just saying that because you guys are sitting here, but really that like it really opens the door to being creative as a software developer, where you know it's allowing, you know, it's allowing me to just worry about building something cool instead of worrying about all this other infrastructure and everything else. And so as soon as I start to pull that stuff away and I don't have to worry about all the nuances of like, well, how am I going to get this data and how am I going to pull that API and how much you're going to pay for that, it changes your perspective of like what I can actually start to build. And any tool that's like this that can do that, I think is a net win for developers. So I hope everyone, even if you don't actually do something for the hackathon, at least check it out and see what it does for yourself.
I feel like every project on Near should sign up for the hackathon just to use this and start building with a Masa AI agent. Like really, like at what other time? And then just like you can
there's no downside. I mean, there's no downside, right? I'm not going to lose money. That's number one, because you get said.
There's a
and
bounty.
two,
You can make money.
There's a bounty.
I can make money, and on top of all of it, again, sometimes you don't really realize like what's capable until you actually start to experience it. And so this is why also I think hackathons are great, and you know, where you can just come in, I can mess around a bit. If it fails, it fails, but at least I can just now try. I have no pressure on it. You know, I'm certainly going to look into it for Jared and I's project. So I mean, yeah, it's
Shard Dog AI agent, you know that's happening, Joe. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be wild. But I'm
sure.
Yeah. And we're gonna make it so easy for you to get up and running. You know, I love how Joe is really focusing on the creating space for creativity as an engineer and a developer. We'll show you tomorrow just how easy that is. Lots of example code. I think the biggest takeaway I want everyone to leave tomorrow with is 0 to something is not hard. And the ability to go from 0 to 1 today is so easy. It's hours, not days, where it used to be months. And this leverage that you now have by using tools in the AI space is just going to accelerate you so fast to the point of like validation and proof that, you know, shipping real product to users, you can get there so quickly. And that's one thing we really focused on tomorrow, is like making you realize like how high the velocity can be today with some of these new tools that are in your kind of toolkit.
Yeah. Awesome.
Anything else, Clinton, you want to say anything as we're wrapping up here?
No, I think everyone should tune in tomorrow and to see how the Masa magic works in person, how to set up Masa, how to build an AI agent within 5 minutes.
See, this is, I'm going to, and then we're going to clip that into a single video. And then I'm going to make sure everybody watches that video and everybody makes an AI agent, because it just, I get so hyped on this. It makes there's no reason you shouldn't make an AI agent in the next month.
Exactly.
In my mind.
Exactly.
Like, it'll be wild. Well, I just want to thank you guys. I'm going to do a little bit of like, just so everyone listening, the hackathon. It's the Redacted online hackathon. And then I think we even have, please tell me we've got boom. That's where you go sign up at the hackathon at the redacted.devpost.com. Over 1,000 people already signed up, but there's 2 verticals, chain abstraction and also AI. And I think the AI stuff is a lot of agents, and then Masa is doing some bounties as well. So it's going to be really cool. And then also, so everybody knows, there's also the actual event where we're going to give out the awards and have a bonus hacking on site, cool stuff like that. And that's November 9th through the 11th in Bangkok. So that'll be really cool. Here's a little fun little thing. There we go. And then I just want to thank you all so much for being on here. Look forward to tomorrow. And until tomorrow, have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks for a great session,
Thanks for having
everyone.
us on.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.